Der Volkstrauertag in Bad Pyrmont ist immer wieder etwas Besonderes.
Remembrance Day
Das
in
ist in
Bad
erster
Pyrmont
Linie
is
Helmut
always a very
Eichmann,
special
dem
occasion,
Vorsitzenden der
and
Ortsgruppe
this
des
is thanks
Volksbundes
to the
Deutscher
dedication of
Kriegsgräbervorsorge
Helmut
in Bad
Eichmann,
Pyrmont zu verdanken,
chairman of the
der sich
local war
unermüdlich für
cemetery
durchaus
association in Bad
spektakuläre
Pyrmont.
Elemente einsetzt, der
He
immer
works
wieder für
tirelessly
Aufsehen
in
sorgt
this field,
bei der
sometimes
Gedenkstunde
using
am
quite
Bad Pyrmonter
spectacular ways
Mahnmal.
of drawing attention to the message he wants to bring home at the remembrance ceremony beside the war memorial in Bad Pyrmont.
Dear guests, fellow citizens and children, we're gathered here today to remember the victims of war and violence, all the more real with the recent attacks in Paris. Lord Mayor Blome and myself have laid down wreaths to commemorate those who died in war and brutal dictatorships.
Auch in diesem Jahr fand die Veranstaltung bei denkbar schlechtem Wetter statt.
This year too,
Ein
the
regelrechter
ceremony
Sturm
took place
peitschte
in
den
pouring
stetigen
rain,
niederprasselnden
blown
Regen
by
fast
the wind in
waagrecht durch die
horizontal
Luft.
sheets against
Doch
the
dem
people
äußerst
present.
ungemütlichen Wetter zum
But
Trotz,
despite the terrible
pünktlich zur
weather, a
Veranstaltung
crowd
fanden
of
sich
listeners had
Zuschauer ein,
arrived
kamen die
punctually at the
Gäste
beginning
wohl
of the
auch eingedenk
ceremony,
der Anschläge in Paris,
perhaps
die an
moved
diesem
and
Wochenende
saddened
wieder
yet
viele
more by the many who
Todesopfer forderten.
died during the
Es
attacks in
kamen
Paris this
Abordnungen Bad
weekend.
Pyrmonter Vereine,
There were
von den
representatives
Schützenvereinen,
from Bad
der
Pyrmont
Feuerwehr und der
associations, the Shooting
Reservistenkameradschaft
Club,
und
Fire
legten
Rescue
ihre Kränze
Service,
nieder.
and the Reserves
Musikalisch
Comradeship, who
unterstützt und
also laid
begleitet
down
wurde
their
die
wreaths.
Veranstaltung vom TuS
Music was
Blasorchester
played by the
und
Bad
dem
Pyrmont
Kirchenchor
Brass
der
Band,
Neuapostolischen
and the
Kirche
Parishioners
unter
Choir
Leitung
from
von
the New
Theo
Apostolic
Meyer-Hans.
Church sang, led by their conductor, Theo Meyer-Hans. Lord Mayor Klaus
Nach der
Blome
Begrüßung
addressed the
durch Helmut
crowd
Eichmann
after
sprach
Helmut
der Bad
Eichmann
Pyrmonter
had spoken the
Bürgermeister Klaus
introduction,
Blome, der schon Helmut
both
Eichmann vor
taking
dem
turns
Regen
to hold
schützen
up an
musste.
umbrella to
Und
protect
Bad
the other
Pyrmonts
from the
katholischer
downpour.
Pfarrer Winfried Neumann
The
hielt
Catholic
seine
priest
Rede zum
Father
Volkstrauertag.
Winfried Neumann
Ein
was also one of the
Volkstrauertag
speakers,
überschattet von den Pariser
addressing the
Ereignissen,
terrible
die
events in
niemanden
Paris which have
unberührt ließen.
overshadowed the last 48 hours and this Remembrance Day, leaving everyone deeply
Eine
troubled.
schier nicht enden wollende Kette
A long
Kinder
line of
legte ganz
children
nach
laid
russischem
wreaths
Brauch
at the war
Blumen am
memorial
Bad
opposite
Pyrmonter
Bad
Mahnmal
Pyrmont's
gegenüber dem
castle,
Schloss
as
nieder.
is the Russian
Eine Idee
tradition.
der russischen Delegation
This was the
aus
idea
Khimki
of the
von
Russian
Moskau,
delegation
die
from
in diesem
Khimki,
Jahr sogar
near
mit einem
Moscow,
russischen
who
Fernsehteam
even brought
zusammen
a Russian
angereist
TV
waren.
crew with
Ein
them this
deutliches
year.
Zeichen für die
A
deutsch-russische
clear sign of the
Freundschaft, das
German-Russian
Helmut
friendship
Eichmann hier
which
setzen
Helmut
kann.
Eichmann can
Mit einem
demonstrate here,
Beitrag, der ungefähr
with a
30
report
Millionen
that can reach
Zuschauer in der
30 million
Moskauer Region
viewers in the
erreicht,
Moscow
wenn er im
region
russischen
when it
Fernsehen
is broadcast
ausgestrahlt
on
wird.
Russian television. Mr. Eichmann, Remembrance Day holds special meaning for you.
Yes, indeed. It is an important day for me, a day for remembering, reflecting and thinking about the huge numbers of people who have died through war and still die in wars today. This should lead us to think hard about it and draw the proper conclusions, which must be to approach each other, the neighboring countries, for example the Russians, and discover what we have in common, cooperate and work in collaboration to develop friendship. This would be a great contribution that would help us enormously, from the past for the future. I was invited to Russia by my Russian friends and encountered warmth. I was made welcome and looked after during my stay. In Russia, they remember 70 years victory over fascist Germany with many ceremonies at numerous monuments, but I was still made very welcome with heartfelt openness and friendliness. The impression I got was that the Russians want to work with Germany.
Es ist da die Situation, 70 Jahre Sieg über faschistisches Deutschland und es waren viele Siegesfeiern da, es waren viele Monumente da und trotz alledem waren die Russen sehr herzlich, sehr freundlich, sehr aufgeschlossen und ich hatte den Eindruck, man will mit Deutschland zusammenarbeiten.
Jetzt hat sich ja, während Sie in Russland waren, eine Besonderheit.
We are standing here beside our Russian colleagues while this interview is going on. Could you tell us how this came about?
Yes, you're right. The highlight was the fact that I was allowed to be on Russian television. They made a special point of this, and it was obvious to me that it was very important for them to develop a cooperation with me. There were clear signs that the Russians are very interested in such a collaboration, such as showing me a number of historical sites and actually coming over here.
Zum Beispiel eben, indem sie auch mehr historische Plätze gezeigt haben und eben auch, indem sie auch wieder hierher gekommen sind.
And how did you manage to persuade Russian TV to come with you?
Das habe ich natürlich nicht geschafft.
I didn't manage that part personally, that was my Russian friends. For this, many thanks. I feel greatly honored that Russian television has come to Bad Pyrmont.
Thank you for the interview. This isn't our first time here, it's the second time already that we've been here for Remembrance Day. We were invited by Mrs. Stutz and Mr. Blome, and we are naturally always open for German guests to visit us too. Remembering and mourning for the German and Russian soldiers who died in the past is what moved us and is our driving force. And right now, with regard to the terrible terrorist attacks in Paris, we want to stand shoulder to shoulder, learn from the past and ensure that nothing like the past can happen again in the future.
Also die wichtigste Ziel, was jetzt los, also zum Beispiel was in Frankreich war, das Terrorismus, dass wir zusammen kämpfen wegen sowas, was jetzt läuft, wegen Terrorismus und wir haben Vergangenheit und deswegen wir müssen lernen, was früher war und nicht so, dass in Zukunft kommt.